Coming up on Tech News Weekly, I am Mikah Sargent, and I am joined by special guest co-host Amanda Silberling of TechCrunch. We kick off the show with our stories of the week. Amanda talks about a really weird trend going on in TikTok as there is a 9-month world cruise underway, and TikTok has basically made a reality show about it. Then I talk about Rabbit's R1. It's a pocket AI companion that lets you connect to and control apps using AI. After that, Moren of SixColors.com joins us to talk about the Apple Vision Pro launch and what we can expect before we round things out with Albergotti of Semafor to talk about predictions for generative AI in 2024. All of that is coming up on Tech News Weekly.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
This is Tech News Weekly with Mikah Sargent and this week, Amanda Silberling, episode 319, recorded Thursday, January 11th, 2024. Generative AI predictions for 2024. This episode of Tech News Weekly is brought to you by Lookout. Your data is always on the move, whether on a device, in the cloud, across networks, or at the local coffee shop. While that's great for your workforce, it's a challenge for IT security. Lookout helps you control your data and free your workforce. With Lookout, you'll gain complete visibility into all your data so you can minimize risk from external and internal threats, plus ensure compliance. By seamlessly securing hybrid work, your organization doesn't have to sacrifice productivity for security. Working with multiple point solutions and legacy tools in today's environment is just too complex. With its single unified platform, Lookout reduces IT complexity, giving you more time to focus on whatever else comes your way. Good data protection isn't a cage, it's a springboard, letting you and your organization bound toward a future of your making. Visit lookout.com today to learn how to safeguard data, secure hybrid work, and reduce IT complexity. That's lookout.com. Hello and welcome to Tech News Weekly, the show where every week we talk to and about the people making and breaking the tech news. I am one of your hosts this week. That's right. I am Mikah Sargent. And this week I am joined by a special guest co-host. It's a new thing we're trying out. And Amanda Silberling of TechCrunch is joining us. Hello, Amanda.
Hello. It is great to be here on this little monitor next to you.
Thank you.
It's very tech. It's very robot forward. We're, bridging the gap between physical space
and liminal space, I guess. I am very much looking forward to this. So I have this vision of having guest co-hosts on the show that are able to join us once a month. And so you graciously offered to join me for the second Thursday of every month. And so this is us kicking it off. And that is so that we can do a back and forth of our stories of the week. And so, Amanda, I invited you to bring us a story of the week. So if you would like to introduce that story and we can chat about it, I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah. So at TechCrunch, I write about internet culture, among other things, but we're going to kick off this guest host situation with some very unhinged things on the internet. Have you heard of the TikTok World Cruise?
The TikTok World Cruise. So for the sake of the show, I'm going to say no, because the truth is I had not heard about it until Amanda told me about it. But let's pretend like I have not heard about it at all. No, yes. Amanda, what is the TikTok World Cruise? So
to be clear, this is not a TikTok sponsored thing. It's just a thing that is happening on TikTok a lot. So we're calling it the TikTok Cruise. But Royal Caribbean is doing a 9-month cruise around the world. 9 months is a long time for people to be on a boat together. And we're all expecting that a bunch of drama is going to happen. But the reason why we even care about people on a cruise is because there are so many travel influencers on this ship, and they are all making a bunch of content about it. And it is like extremely weird and funny because generally the people that go on cruises are like independently wealthy young people and then like retirees who are living their best lives. So like you have these retired like old people becoming influencers because they're on the cruise, and it's like this reality show unfolding on the internet in real time. I think if you're familiar with Bama Rush, which was a similar kind of phenomenon on TikTok a couple years ago, where people that were doing sorority rush at the University of Alabama became like weirdly very popular on the platform because people were just really fascinated by like the extreme, like very, very extreme sorority culture at the University of Alabama and what these girls had to do to rush these sororities and all of the just, I don't know, Greek life is wild.
Yeah.
But this is sort of the next iteration of that, where instead of obsessing over like the weird wealth of Southern sororities, now we're obsessing over the weird wealth of these travel influencers who are like making content together. But to make another college comparison, I'm thinking like, imagine the first week of college where everybody that you're on your hall with, you're like, these are my new best friends. And then by the end of the first semester, you're like, I hate all these people.
Yeah.
So we're 1 month into the 9 months. Ooh. And we've had a little bit of drama, but I feel like we gotta stay tuned in.
Yeah.
And hit the fan. I don't know if I can curse on this show.
Oh yeah, so that is something you wouldn't know. No, we don't do curses, but that's okay. We'll bleep that out.
Things are gonna hit the fan.
Things will hitteth the faneth. So let's talk about this a little bit. I think from a tech perspective, because I think about you mentioned the group that tends to go on these cruises. Used to be that it was retirees who would spend their retired years, because they still live in an economy where they can retire and it's feasible, and be able to take that time and go on a ship and whatever. And I imagine, people with iPads holding them up and taking cute little photos of animals they see swimming or flying in the air, or their meals, and then they wait till they get to a location where they can post it on their Facebook. This is going from a place that seemed relatively low tech to suddenly being kind of this is high tech, right? I mean, this is regular postings, regular content that's being displayed. And do you think that, is there something unique about this situation, or are we going to start seeing these sorts of reality shows popping up everywhere, particularly as we start to move into a time when we're starting to wear these devices that are constantly able to capture things, even more so than us pulling our phones out of our pockets? Like, should I be prepared that the next time I'm at the grocery store, I'm suddenly on a TikTok reality show about shopping at Sprouts Farmers Market?
I hope not, because I don't want to be on a TikTok show about grocery shopping, unless if they're paying for my groceries, then that's cool. But I guess I'm thinking about Rebecca Jennings, who's a reporter at Vox, posted on Twitter, X, whatever we're calling it, like, it was kind of off. Like, this point is something that we all know, but it was like distilled very cleverly of, we're like, the issue with media literacy right now is that we're used to consuming content by trained professionals. And now we're getting such large amounts of content from just like ordinary people. So like, and it's given the same weight in social media. And sometimes that can be good because it lets us hear from people that we wouldn't traditionally hear from if we're only being mediated through traditional press. But now, like, anyone can just say things, and that's a misinformation issue as well. Mm-hmm. In terms of the cruise, I mean, I think the reason the cruise is fun is because nothing really is at stake here. Like, I'm just here like, oh man, Mike and Nancy, these empty nesters, they told us that they're running out of wine on the ship. So that's an issue.
Oh no. See, and this is the other thing too. I'm thinking about the possible impact this has on the safety of the cruise? What if, because you mentioned in your piece about this that there's an influencer who is joining it and saying, somebody sponsor me to go on this, I will cause chaos, da 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 da. Pretty sure it's illegal to cause chaos in the sense of, there's a hole in the hull of the ship and everybody needs to panic, right? And if there's one thing I've learned about influencers, it's that very few of them have boundaries. And so I wonder what, there's a balance, right, that these brands have to strike where Royal Caribbean is probably going, okay, it would be great if we have people paying attention to our 9-month cruises. But at the same time, we've got these influencers who know not a boundary, who would come on and do stuff that's kind of dangerous. That part kind of concerns me because there's a lot of, as we call it, clout chasing going on. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. No, you bring up a really interesting dynamic of this is that you aren't just like on the cruise with people that are there for the full 9 months. I think Royal Caribbean didn't sell enough 9-month tickets. So now they're also selling like a couple week-long legs of the cruise. So right now you could still buy a ticket to go on this cruise.
Wow.
Which, I mean, that's what this influencer, Mark Sebastian, did, where he posted a video being like, send me on the cruise. I'm going to cause chaos. Someone sponsor me. And a book company did sponsor him.
Wow.
So like he's getting paid to go on the cruise. He's been on the cruise for 3 days so far. So far, he's like being pretty chill about the whole thing. Like he's being funny, but not like disruptive.
Okay, good. See, and I wonder if it depends on if he had been sponsored by Sour Patch Kids, then maybe it would have been a lot more ridiculous instead of being sponsored by a book company. Like or Rockstar Energy Drink. I wonder how many Club TWiT signups it would take to get me onto that cruise. That would be an interesting thing. But no, overall, I find this fascinating from so many perspectives, but it is kind of wild that because even though it's rarer for these longer cruises to happen. In fact, you talked about the cruise that was a little bit like Fire Festival where people had signed up for it and then it got canceled and they didn't even have a boat. It's kind of wild how algorithmic, what impact algorithmic presentation has on what is getting attention, right? That suddenly we're talking about TikTok World Cruise because enough people early on started paying attention to these videos. And then from there, it grew, and more people are learning about it. And I mean, we're talking about it on this very show. And I don't know that we are far off from that sort of organic sponsoring that takes place where it's like, oh, Royal Caribbean has a deal with, this is not the case, but I'm imagining a future where Royal Caribbean has a deal with TikTok where more people are seeing these videos and then more people are getting interested in going on these cruises and they're marketing to a younger generation because, as you pointed out, for the most part, it's retirees that go on this thing. So yeah, there's a lot of potential here, but I think a lot of what leads me back to a little bit of cynicism about our tech future.
Yeah. And I think a good example of this is, so when you do something for the first time on social media, even if it might be a little gimmicky, it can still be fun. So I think that the World Cruise is fun to follow because, to my knowledge, Royal Caribbean had nothing to do with this. This was just organic. Mm-hmm. And then, so you have this influencer who was like, all right, well, I'm going to go on the ship now. It's funny because he's the first one to do it, but I wouldn't be surprised if in 6 months, there's like a whole crew of influencers that are like going on for short legs. And then it's going to be like, all right, cool. We see what you're doing.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
it is just kind of fascinating that in a normal reality show, you can't really cast yourself. And this influencer essentially casted himself in the show. And the people that are on the cruise are talking about themselves like characters. Like, I opened my article talking about Mike and Nancy, who are my personal favorite people on the cruise.
They're the real
and
people.
Yeah, they're just like retirees who made a TikTok because they saw people on the cruise were doing TikToks, and then they introduced themselves as new characters unlocked.
Aww.
We're retirees.
That's so cute. Everyone should head over to TechCrunch to read the whole article. And I think it's a great way to find those TikTok posts to kind of kick off your understanding of what's going on this world cruise. And as you point out, this is just the first month. There are 8 more months of who knows what could happen. And they're about to go through a passage. You said that could lead to some tumult, yes?
Yeah, they're about to go through the Drake Passage, which is on the way to Antarctica, and it's apparently very dangerous. I do have one more tech-related point to bring it home.
Yeah.
So other reasons why this might be happening right now. In the last few months, TikTok changed its payment program from the Creator Fund to, what are they calling it? They're all called very similar things, but they're switching from dividing one big pot of money among everyone to paying people for specifically longer videos, which they're doing something like not out of a static pool of money. So people are able to earn more money, but it has to be on videos that are a minute long and don't use music that's copyrighted. So we are seeing some more changes in how people use TikTok because people are now very, very incentivized to make videos longer than 1 minute. Wow. And these cruise videos generally are that long, and they're not using original music or they're not using copyrighted music because they're not really doing like trends related to the songs. They're just sort of like, hey, I'm at the cafe on the cruise ship and here's what I ate today.
Okay, interesting. So we might start to see the YouTubification of TikTok, what with this encouragement to produce content that's longer than a minute. That's actually really fascinating because I think about the attention span that one has to deal with when it comes to this. So that should be interesting. Wow. The taste of culture is just interesting these days. And you said you had another point.
The other sinister part of this is that to monetize these videos on TikTok, they have to be longer than 1 minute. So minimum 1 minute and 1 second. You know how long a YouTube short is? The maximum is 1 minute.
Yeah.
So you cannot monetize the same content on both platforms.
Oh, very clever. Okay, that's interesting.
Things are heating up.
Things are heating up, and the gloves are on, not off this time. All right. Well, we will definitely keep an eye on where that's going, and also just the changes in TikTok in general. And up next is going to be my story of the week, but I do want to remind everybody that's listening out there, it is time for the annual TWiT Audience Survey. This annual survey helps us understand our audience, so of course we can make your listening experience even better. It's at twit.tv/survey24. It'll only take you a few minutes. You go to twit.tv/survey24 to take it. And please don't wait. The last day to take the survey is January 31st, so we'd love to hear from you. twit.tv/survey24. Thanks so much. Alrighty, we are back from the break, and it's time for me to talk about my story of the week. Joining us, of course, here on the show this week is Amanda Silberling of TechCrunch, who will be discussing my story of the week as well. I wanted to talk about a new product that was announced at CES. It's from a company called Rabbit, and Rabbit is selling a device called the R1. The R1 is this little square device that has a little screen on it. It has a SIM card slot. It has a USB-C port for charging. It has a scroll and click wheel, and it has a camera. And its purpose is to serve as an interface with many an app. And what's interesting about this device is instead of going the way of kind of the other AI hardware that we've seen early on, which aims to kind of connect you to some sort of AI chatbot, those generative AI chatbots. This device is meant to serve as a way to control applications. And so the device runs a technology called Rabbit OS, and the company is calling what it does a large action model. And so you can think of it like this. You would pull out your Rabbit, or your R1, excuse me, and you would say, order me a pizza. And then it might ask you some questions about the pizza that you want. And then it goes in and it does everything that's necessary to actually order the pizza that you want. Or maybe you want to get an Uber. And so you say, I need a ride to the Empire State Building. Then it will do all of the process of making that happen. You can have it play music, pause music, do everything like that. But what's unique about this device is that it is trainable. And so the creator of the company and the device explains one instance. And I'm kind of curious to hear your thoughts on this in particular, Amanda. The example that was given to The Verge is a little bit nefarious because they said, maybe something that you regularly do is you open up Photoshop and you select a watermark on a photo, and then you use Photoshop's tools to remove the watermark, and then you have a photo that has no watermark. They said you could train the R1 to do that same process of opening Photoshop, clicking on the lasso tool, highlighting this portion that has a watermark on it, and then hitting the content fill or whatever it needs to be to remove the watermark. And then you could do it on as many photos as you wanted to. Should we be advocating for the removal of watermarks on photos in the first place? That doesn't seem like a great example of how this tech can be used.
Yeah, it seems like another similar question is, should we be advocating for generative AI to be able to take art that artists made and use it to make art that is similar to the art that artists made without their knowledge? Like, it's kind of in a similar vein because you are taking copyrighted material and avoiding buying it from the people that made it when you take a watermark off. But also, it's just a weird example. I'm more just like marketing wise, like, I feel like that's not a compelling example of what this device is supposed to do. Yeah,
I don't think that the CEO had somebody nearby going, don't mention that. You should probably mention this. So let's talk a little bit more about it. It's available. It was available in pre-order for $199, and the reason that I wanted to talk about it on the show is because it was just debuted on Tuesday at CES, and they have now sold the 10,000 kind of first run models that they plan on shipping in March. So a device that debuted at CES, that there was only one working model of the device, which was being held by the CEO of the company at CES, is now sold out because at least 10,000 people. You can even pre-order if you're now if you want to. You just won't get that first run. Sight unseen, people have just purchased this $199 device without having anything outside of the presentation of the device and maybe the couple of reviews that have been online. That is wild to me. That is farther down the line than even ordering from Kickstarter and Indiegogo, because at least there you have these slick graphics a lot of the times and these videos that are showing the product and, oh, this is exactly what we plan to do. And you also have these steps along the way where you see that the device is being made. This seems a little bit like, it seems risky in my opinion, but I do want to talk a little bit more about the interactions, and then we'll get your thoughts, Amanda, before I say goodbye. The way that the device is supposed to work in early days is, along with being able to interact with the different kind of apps that you would want to, or the different modals or whatever, the modals that you would want to, it has a website that you visit, a portal called the Rabbit Hole, and you go there to kind of connect it with common services. So, your Amazon shopping cart or your Google Mail or whatever it happens to be. And then, in order to train it, because I saw somebody asking questions about how you train it for something like Photoshop, you will actually on your computer spin up a virtual machine from Rabbit that will be used to train it on how to interact with Photoshop itself. It's unclear to me if what it will do is connect with your PC locally and launch Photoshop on your computer and then do that. I don't know how that all works in particular. Or does Rabbit just offer, as part of what it does, access to the Creative Cloud suite? There are lots of questions there. It's unclear. And that's why it's wild to me that so many people pre-order this device. I'm curious. So when it first came, whenever people first kind of started talking about it, they almost placed it as this little hardware device that would be a replacement for some of the apps that you would use on your iPhone or your smartphone, excuse me. And I think that the company sees it as more than that. It is the one app, the universal app that can do everything else. And that, I think, it's compelling, but I'm just not so sure about its capabilities in doing that. In any case, Amanda, does this interest you at all? Does technology like this interest you at all? And I guess if someone called you and said, you absolutely have to own one of these things and you have to use it, what would you use it with? How would you actually see yourself using it? I know that's a tough question to just throw at you.
Well, to put in context, I'm someone who doesn't own a smartwatch, and this feels like in the same vein of a smartwatch where it's like a smaller version of your phone that is functional like a phone. So I don't know. I mean, I would probably use it like a Pokemon Go Plus, which is a weird little piece of tech that connects to Pokemon Go and catches Pokemon for you. But I don't think I'm a typical consumer in that way. I don't know. I'm very fascinated by this because I don't know if this is a product for people who want fewer uses of tech in their life or more, because it seems like the argument is like, if you can use this tiny little device to order a pizza, then you don't need to use your phone, and we want to use our phones less because we're addicted to them. But is it really solving that problem? But then the other audience is like the kind of people that go to CES and are like really into tech and are like, oh, cool, a new gadget. I want to try it out because I like gadgets, and people like gadgets. That's fine. But I don't know who the primary consumer of this is.
Yeah, so it is compelling when I think about some of the different interactions that I might do on my device that take 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 steps, that there are apps that I maybe use in the same way each time or roundabout the same way each time. And being able to have that kind of all be automated is pretty cool. But I also don't like the idea of handing over my information to a company that has no history and has no history of proving itself to be secure. And so the idea that I need to go onto the rabbit hole and put in my credentials for Amazon or whatever it happens to be, and even, pizza, the pizza place that I use, it's just, I don't know how I feel about it. So I'm very skeptical, but I wouldn't be surprised if when March rolls around, someone in my vicinity will have one, and I'll get to hear more about it when it comes out. Amanda Silberling, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to join me today for the first half of this show. Of course, folks can head over to TechCrunch to check out your work, but where do they go online to just follow with what you're doing?
I'm unfortunately still on Twitter, and my Twitter is at @asilbwrites, as in my little lower third thing. I also have a podcast called Wow If True, which is about internet culture. And if you are fascinated by the TikTok world cruise, then boy, do I have a podcast for you.
Awesome. Thank you, Amanda. And we'll see you again next month. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right. Up next, got details on the Apple Vision Pro in just a moment. Alrighty, folks, it is time to get into our interviews for the day. And to kick things off, we are joined by Six Colors East Coast Bureau Chief. It's Dan Moren. Welcome back to the show, Dan.
Hey, Mikah, good to be here as always.
Good to have you on the show. And thank you for being here to talk about Apple and its new Apple Vision Pro. So let's kick things off by telling us what Apple announced in terms of the Apple Vision Pro. Will we gain access to this device soon? Are we expecting, what are the dates and times for pre-orders and all that jazz?
The dates and times. The dates are coming soon and the times are coming fast. Well, it's the Vision Pro is scheduled to be available in Apple stores on February 2nd. Now, if you want to pre-order before that, you can, starting January 19th, which is a week from Friday, this Friday, at 5 a.m. Pacific and 8 a.m. Eastern. So if you're like me on the good coast, you get to have a nice leisurely cup of coffee, order your Vision Pro, not have to set an alarm. If you're on the West Coast, I'm sorry, you're going to have to probably get up a little bit early in order to snag one here.
Okay, so you're planning on ordering one then?
Yeah, let me just rifle through my wallet right here. Looking a little bit short right now. To remind everybody, this is going to run $34.99. That's $3,499, not $34.99. So it's going to be a good chunk of change if you want to get yourself one of these on day one. But there's also some question of exactly how many units are going to be available and how much Apple is actually sort of pushing this. So I think, certainly if you're interested, you probably want to move fast, but it will be interesting to see exactly how it's received.
To put that into context, that's like 2.25 iPhones, right? Something like that.
Depends on which iPhone.
Yeah, that's true. Depends if you're buying one of the new iPhone 15 Pros outright. That's somewhere between like 14, I think, and 1,600.
You could probably still buy two iPhone 15 Pros and then put one over each eye and get the same effect, probably.
So let's talk about the device itself. It's very expensive, and it'll be interesting to see kind of how many people end up getting this. I want to, before we get into what Apple is planning to have available on launch day, I want to get your take on a take that I'm seeing a lot around the web, and that is a take that suggests that this is a developer device. In other words, a device built for developers to create for the Apple Vision platform that Apple is sort of subsidizing by selling the device to the public in the hopes that people will snap it up and will kind of help to recoup the cost of all of the work that's been put into making it. Do you think that it is a fully realized, a fully ready to rock product from Apple, or are you kind of in that same vein of believing that this is just Apple kind of iterating in public?
Yeah, I've seen that take too, probably from some of the same sources as you, but I don't think I entirely agree with that. Yes, it's a 1.0 product, but the key is it's a 1.0 product, not a 0.5 product or something like that. It's not going to be what the Apple Vision Pro is probably going to be 2 or 3 years from now. But then again, if you go back in time and look at the original iPhone and the original Apple Watch, this is not at all unprecedented for Apple. Certainly those devices were a lot cheaper, but the original iPhone didn't run third-party apps. That was Steve Jobs had said the web apps were a perfectly good solution, a sweet solution. Mm-hmm. The original Apple Watch was kind of underpowered and was running a lot of apps that were essentially projected from an iPhone. And it was very slow, and it had a bunch of features that were emphasized that turned out people didn't really want it all. I think Apple gets overplayed sometimes for having this idea that it delivers this perfect finished, widget to the public, when in truth, these things do evolve over time. And I think Apple is certainly doing some degree of its development in public here, but I think that's a necessity with a device that is a brand new category like this. Nobody, including Apple, has any idea of exactly what people are going to use this for or exactly what might turn out to be the killer app for this at present. So to my mind, they are saying, hey, this is a device certainly for early adopters, but I don't think it's necessarily aimed squarely at developers. I think there are a lot of people, and I have certainly seen anecdotally people that I know or people that I've heard from who are like very excited about this and going out on day one to buy one, who aren't necessarily app developers. Yeah, they tend to be a little bit more techie in terms of their, audience or whatever, but it's not necessarily just for, hey, I want to build apps for this thing. It's, I want to be on the cutting edge and see this new device that like I really, don't know what it's going to be good for, but I am intrigued and I want to try it out.
So let's talk about what Apple is making available on day one, because obviously this device in and of itself is a whole new experience, and you'll be able to view stuff in. Apple doesn't even like to use the term virtual reality or augmented reality or mixed reality, but you need content to be able to do that. Do we know how many movies are going to be able to, people are going to be able to view, what apps from Apple itself will be available? What is Apple doing any sort of preparing people for what they'll be able to do on day one with this device? Or much like, I would argue, apps sell iPhones and iPads, I should say third-party apps sell iPhones and iPads, is Apple really relying on the developer base to put out stuff that's compelling to get people to purchase the Apple Vision Pro?
Yeah, a little of column A, a little column B, I think. Apple has not detailed everything to date that is available, but certainly if you look at the screenshots and the stuff that Apple showed off previously, a lot of those standard first-party apps that you're used to from your iPhone, your iPad, or your Mac are going to be there, including music and Safari and email and the iWork suite like Keynote and Pages, as well as certainly media stuff like Apple TV. They have talked about access to basically like things on Apple Arcade, which is their gaming service, as well as providing some ability to watch high resolution movies via the Apple TV Plus store or Apple TV Plus service, as well as partners like Disney Plus and Max. They haven't talked a lot about like additional specific content for this other than their sort of immersive environments that they've showed off. People have pointed out that like there are examples of 3D movies available in the iTunes store. And so there are chances there that you may be able to check those out. Apple says, I think there'll be 150 3D titles available at launch. And so that's part of what they're talking about as well. But let's also not forget that they have said basically there'll be an app store that launches day one along with this. So third-party apps are certainly part of the story. I think we just don't necessarily have a great idea of what those third-party apps are and which are going to be the ones that people really are excited about.
Now, let's go into a kind of reminder of this device in terms of what features and functionality it provides, and also what people can expect if they were to purchase this, what's in the box, and how it compares to when the product was originally announced. So first and foremost, just tell us about the Vision Pro, what it does, and then again, what can be expected because when we first saw it, there was an announcement of kind of these very showy videos that sort of flashed by.
Right, sure.
And now we know what hardware to expect in the box.
Yeah, absolutely. So we do know, essentially this is an immersive spatial computer as Apple describes it, which has these tiny little micro OLED screens that basically sit really close to your eyes and provide this immersive environment, as well as providing some degree of pass-through via like cameras that are mounted on the outside. So you can sort of toggle how immersive your environment is, going from an environment that's entirely synthetic to one where you can kind of see the real world, to one where you can basically pass right through and see the real world around you, talk to people, etc. It also includes M2 chip, which is the same chip that powers Apple's not most recent, but second most recent line of Macs, as well as some audio and a bunch of different sensors that are built in to provide all of these sort of immersive experiences. In terms of what we know comes with it, Apple has detailed a few things that come in the box, including 2 different bands to wear, around your head, a solo knit band and a dual loop band, I believe, which gives a like over the head strap as well. That also includes a light seal and then 2 light seal cushions. So these are basically the thing that goes in between the headset and your face to sort of cushion it and keep it on there. There's also a cover for the front of the device. a battery, 'cause this is tethered via an external battery pack, a USB-C charging cable, and a USB-C power adapter. And of course, most importantly, a polishing cloth for when you invariably get some gross stuff on your Vision Pro and need to wipe it down.
Nice. And that's included. So, you don't have to pay extra.
Yeah, you don't have to pay extra for that. That's right. Hey, they've included the power adapter. Let me tell you, it's not a given with Apple these days.
Yeah,
but if you're paying $3,500, the least they can do is throw in a brick. So
what do we know about the process of actually purchasing the device when, whether you're because there are demos that are going to be available, it seems. And then also, if I were to make this purchase, is it just going to be shipped to me? How much do we know about that? What details have been provided there?
Not as much as, frankly, I would like to. We know a few things. One, we do know that you'll be able to order it online. We also know that you will be able to buy lens inserts for it. So if you're somebody who needs corrective vision, they're making available these optical inserts from Zeiss, which start at $99 for just reader style adjustments, as well as $149 for prescription adjustments. We don't know how you convey that information to Apple or exactly which prescriptions they'll make available. Obviously, there's a huge range of those, and Apple may choose to only emphasize the ones that they find sort of the most common. Beyond that, we are kind of in the dark. We know that you'll be able to go in and sort of try this out in the Apple Store starting February 2nd. I believe it'll require reservations in order to do so, but we don't really know what the full process is in terms of whether or not this is getting shipped to you, whether this is getting shipped to a store, what's the process of having it tried on. We have seen some reports that there are, for example, different styles of cushions for those light seals. So if you have a different, like your face is a different size, you need something to be more comfortable, there will be a couple different options, but currently that's from third-party reports, not even from Apple directly itself. I expect we'll hear more about this, certainly by the time the pre-orders go up next week, though I would hope in advance of that so people can sort of get prepared and know what they're going to have to do when they start actually going through this whole process.
All right. Well, I guess any last things we should know about the Vision Pro launch and making sure that if somebody out there is after one, what they need to do to be prepared for those pre-orders. I imagine there's not, as you said, probably not a lot in stock, perhaps in comparison to the demand.
Right. Well, certainly what we don't know outweighs what we do know still at this point, a week out from pre-orders. Obviously, if you are really feeling like you got to get one of these day one with Apple products, it's never a bad idea to get up and be ready to hit that Apple Store as soon as the clock ticks over. So 5 a.m. Pacific on Friday the 19th for the West Coasters and 8 a.m. Eastern. You can try your luck at a store if you want to try it on first, but just be aware that quantities may be limited. And that might mean there's not a lot of demand and that there will be plenty of these to go around, or it might mean they get snapped up as fast as Apple can make them. But I think, certainly something to keep in mind if you are on the fence, but aren't really compelled or don't feel like dropping $3,500. This is unlikely to be the last version of these that Apple makes. We're almost certainly going to see this improve and iterate over the next several years, as Apple always does with its products. So if you're feeling that FOMO for missing out on version 1, don't sweat it too much and realize that version 2 will be coming down the pike soon enough.
Wonderful. Well, of course, folks can head to sixcolors.com to check out your work there. But if they want to follow you online and keep up to date with what you are up to, where should they go to do so?
Mostly active on Mastodon these days. I'm D. Moren at Zeppelin.flights over there, but I'm also on Threads and Blue Sky. Generally search for some version of D. Moren. You can find me. You can find all about me, including my novels. My latest novel, All Souls Lost, at dmoren.com. And if you really enjoy hearing me and Mikah talk about tech, you should tune into the Clockwise podcast every Wednesday over at relay.fm/clockwise. And we definitely appreciate it.
Yes, we do. And Dan, I appreciate you joining me today, and I'm sure we'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.
Pleasure as always. Hope to be doing a virtual FaceTime Vision Pro call with you next time.
Yeah, absolutely. All righty, folks. Up next, what to expect from generative AI in 2024. That will be the next conversation. All right, it is time to talk about AI. Yes, we couldn't get through a full episode of Tech News Weekly without talking about generative AI. I guess we kind of did with the R1, but really they set that apart by saying this is not the AI we typically talk about. But this is going to be a big year for AI, and joining us to share his thoughts on what we can expect in 2024 is Semafor's own Reed Albergotti. Welcome back to the show, Reed.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Good to be here.
Always a pleasure to have you on to talk about, well, in this case, generative AI. So I think 2023, obviously a big year for us paying more and more attention to generative AI. And right before the year ended, you put out a piece along with Louis Matsakis about generative AI and kind of what you expected going forward. So I thought, you know what, as we're kicking off this year, let's get into it. Let's talk about it. First and foremost, though, I think it's worth examining kind of the premise of this, because the headline is generative AI will move from hype to actually being helpful. And I think that in and of itself deserves some examination, because it suggests that 2023 was a year of hype and not helpfulness. And so can you explain that? Like what led that to be the headline? What led that to be the conversation in terms of us looking at it as this hype train?
Yeah, and I don't actually see that as a negative. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying that in a bad way, like, well, this was just a useless technology this year. I think any technology starts off as kind of a novelty, interesting thing that people experiment with. And it's not until later that, we really start to see the use cases, become apparent. And that's true. I mean, that was true with mobile, right? That was true with the World Wide Web before mobile. So I think that's just only natural. The other thing that sort of has held back generative AI, and I think a lot of people don't fully appreciate it, is just the ability to run these huge large language models efficiently as much as we want. There are real limitations to the biggest, most powerful models, just from a cost perspective. And so I think those are things, those are the kind of more nerdy, some might say boring things that are happening, below the surface, but people are working really hard. There are companies being created just to deal with this problem, everywhere from the software stack to, the chip stack. So I think that stuff, as it begins to work out, and I'm not saying that's going to happen next year entirely, but it will get better. That will sort of allow the creative sort of minds of the tech industry to really use this technology.
Yeah, so let's dive into some of these categories that you discussed, because I think that sometimes when we talk about generative AI, in fact, just last year, I showed I think it was Microsoft's Copilot that could do songs. And so we generated a funny little song for Tech News Weekly. And we see these sort of Fisher-Price toy style things that generative AI can do, but there's so much more to it that often gets buried because it's not as flashy and maybe a little bit boring on the face of it, right? Or we kind of see it that way. But this could have a huge impact. And the first one that you talk about is drug discovery. Talk about how AI can make a dent in drug discovery.
Yeah, I mean, it really already is. We had an article yesterday in the newsletter about this company called In Silico, which I believe is the first company to have an AI generated drug make it to phase 2 of clinical trials. So we haven't really seen this stuff end up in the drugstore yet or end up being prescribed yet, but it's happening. And what's really going on is big pharma and startups alike, oftentimes they're partnering with each other. They are setting up ways to, you essentially ask a computer, sometimes even in natural language, hey, here's this disease. Can you come up with molecules that will attack this particular disease and nothing else in the human body? And they're able to do that. And, it's generating hundreds, maybe thousands of possibilities, and the vast majority of those will not work. But some of them do. And the way drug discovery's worked in the past, this stuff is just trial and error after trial and error. And it's just people doing it in the lab. And now we have computers to speed up that process to just such a huge degree. I mean, even if we could get to, like, say, a 20% effectiveness rate with this technology, it would just be a sea change in how drugs are created in the world. Mm-hmm. And it kind of takes us on this road, and this is far off into the future, not next year, but on this road toward personalized medicine, where you get sick and basically there are drugs created for you specifically. You're the only customer, and that sort of gets rid of all the side effects, all the problems that we have with drugs today, which is that they are these blunt instruments that aren't really tailored toward any one individual, and they affect everybody differently. So I think that's a really just exciting way to go for direction for humanity.
Absolutely. I think about anecdotally personal experiences of family members who have dealt with mental health stuff and having to try so many different types of medication before they find the one that actually works well with their brain. And the idea that you could have a medication that is specifically designed for you, and you're not having to titrate and do all of that extra stuff that makes that process that's already so difficult if you are in the middle of depression. That is just, that could make all the difference. I think it's potentially miraculous what could be done there. And it still kind of boggles the mind that there's not as much attention on that as there is on me being able to generate a weird photo anytime I want to. But I understand it on the face of it, but at the same time, it's like, man, there's such cool stuff that can happen there. Along with that, I think it's important to talk about 2024 as an opportunity, as a time for paying more attention to the safety concerns and the safety aspect of AI, because we saw at the end of 2023 more and more opportunities and situations where the law needed to catch up with AI, where regulation needed to catch up with AI. And, there was a story, an unfortunate story about a school where some of the young men were using AI to generate false photos of some of the female classmates. And these were, nude photographs, and I can't remember what state it was, but in whatever state it was, there kind of wasn't any legal precedent there because of the difference between the face, which was of an actual person, and the generated body, which was not of that actual person. So can you talk about AI safety, not just in terms of, looking out for AGI and what that entails, but just having an understanding of how we humans might use this technology and make sure that we're using it in a way that is safe and productive?
Yeah, I think that's a great example, the one you brought up, because that's one where existing laws are just a little bit gray, right? On how to deal with this stuff. I don't think that scenario has ever really come up before. Obviously, there are laws against revenge porn and things like that. But this is a whole new category. So there clearly should be new laws, if there aren't already, in every state, if not federally and around the world, that ban that sort of just obviously bad moral behavior, right? And I think we'll see some of that. The other area that I think is really interesting is copyright law, where the New York Times has now sued OpenAI and Microsoft, claiming that they've used their material to essentially copy the New York Times. They found a way to prompt ChatGPT and have it regurgitate, almost verbatim New York Times articles. Now, I don't think that's really a problem, because I don't think anybody is going to ChatGPT as a replacement for the New York Times. just don't see to try to get around the New York Times paywall or something like that. But I do think there's this really interesting philosophical question that has to be decided by the courts, which is if you train an AI model with data that's available on the internet that has copyright protection, are you using that in a way that is sort of like a person might read a book and now has that knowledge and can create new works of their own that are sort of, informed by that knowledge? Or is it something more akin to, piracy? Mm-hmm. I think that the New York Times and others are arguing that it's more like piracy. And I think that's a really interesting question. But I think there's also a lot of stuff around AI and safety today that I think is like, existing laws can already deal with it, right? Like you talk about bias with AI and using AI to discriminate against people. Well, we already have existing laws, against discrimination. Just using AI to, hire the job candidates based on, race or, discriminate against protected groups. Like that's not, you can't hide behind the technology there. Like that is, and I think some of the problems there are just with the lack of funding for regulators already, the lack of enforcement of existing laws. So I think there's sort of a mixture in my mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Thinking about the lack of funding and how, again, so much of this seems to be that everything is moving so quickly that there's just so much catching up that needs to do to even put that money in place and to, in the cases where it's necessary, convince the general public that it is of the importance that it is in order to get that funding put where it needs to be. There's just so much of that going on. And I guess if we kind of look at 2024, this wasn't necessarily in the piece, but I'm curious, how do you feel 2024 will look in terms of a more general understanding of generative AI? Do you think this is the year where the big tech companies really start to show off generative AI technology in their apps and their hardware, which then leads to more of the general public gaining access to this generative AI, such that more people understand what it is and will be using it more regularly? Or do you think it's still kind of these tools that some people are using? And I want to, a little thing that stuck out to me from the end of last year. I went to a show in San Francisco and we sat down and in the theater, and it was like a live performance. And behind us, a group of people sort of shuffled in and started sitting down. And one of the people started talking about how they had an essay that they had due, and they were so thankful for ChatGPT because ChatGPT helped them write their essay, and how in the past they just would have asked for an extension. I mean, they were just going on and sort of shamelessly talking about how they used AI to write their paper for them. But it was a moment for me because I still had it in my head that, and I understand it's San Francisco, that kind of self-selects a little bit, but just to hear about a college student saying, I'm regularly using this, and then looking at some of the, there was a recent study done for elementary, middle, and maybe, actually I think it was high school aged kids, where a lot of them had not heard of generative AI just in general, and those who had not used it very often. Do you think that this is a year of more general understanding, or is that still farther out?
Well, I do think that it's an interesting anecdotes there too. But I think you're seeing Google, Microsoft, other companies. I think we can expect that Apple will start implementing this stuff. Meta's starting to create their chatbots and put it inside the Ray-Ban glasses that they're selling. And I think people are definitely going to encounter this technology more next year. There's no question about that. I mean, Microsoft has basically incorporated it. They basically totally redesigned Windows around this technology, but it hasn't been rolled out to the general public yet. So, I mean, I fully expect that to happen next year unless there's some huge setback that they face, or not next year, but this year, I should say. It's already 2024. But Windows is just, you think about how ubiquitous that is, right? Like most of the world uses Windows for their work computer. So when that starts happening, I think you'll see just everyone using this. My wife is an attorney. She has, a small law firm, and she's just trying out AI products now. And some of them I've actually written about in my newsletter. These legal AI products are really a big deal. So I think it'll be both like on the personal level and professional level that you see this stuff roll out. On your anecdote, I was just going to comment that I think it's really interesting. Like the bad students are going to use this for sure in a way that is very clumsy, and I wonder if professors will be able to start to tell. Like they'll get a sense for what papers were written by ChatGPT and like not edited at all. Because it's one thing to use it to help you a little bit, but like to write the whole essay is just I think it's going to be so obvious, and I don't see a huge problem with that, because I think the world has always had like the vast majority of people are not great students, right? It's that top 1% of students who end up, being the ones who, they're the scientists and I don't know. I shouldn't say that, because I'm sure there are plenty of C students who've started like huge companies as well. But there's always a dichotomy of people who are ambitious and want to learn and smart, and other people who kind of just want to skate by and put their resources elsewhere. And I don't think that's a huge issue, really.
Yeah. All right. Lastly, I guess I would just love to hear overall anything else that you're kind of on the lookout for when it comes to 2024 and AI. What should we also be keeping our eye out for outside of the standard of more iterations and updates to the technology that we're seeing that's at the forefront? Will we see some other companies reaching the levels of OpenAI? What can we expect?
Yeah, the corporate competition is certainly interesting. Speaking of OpenAI, I'm really interested to see what happens with the store, which was just launched. I think it was yesterday. That to me really unleashes the creativity of their customer base. And you're already seeing companies like Wolfram Alpha, which does like math. They basically incorporated math capabilities into their, GPT that they built. You could already do that, but it was sort of like more difficult, and it's lowering the barriers. So I think that's just going to be fascinating to watch. And then I think agents is the other big thing that I'm looking out for right now. These, large language models, they're a little bit too finicky, and they hallucinate a little bit too much to really like use them as trust them with taking actions for you on your behalf autonomously. So for instance, let's say I have a chatbot and I say, listen, I need a new pair of shoes. Here's what I'm looking for. Can you just go out and find me some and buy them for me? That kind of thing, like just that autonomy is not really, you're not seeing that rolled out yet. As soon as that happens, I think that's like that will mark a big breakthrough in the technology, and will really kind of like, I think, hasten the use of this stuff, because that's when it really becomes like, just a huge time saver for everyone. And I think probably totally changes the way the internet works, right? Which is, funded by like, it's still funded by these like search ads where you Google something and a bunch of ads come up for what you're, trying to buy. Mm-hmm. Once you have that agent experience, that I think all goes away. And, that'll be really interesting. I don't know if that will happen this year or if that's a couple years off, but it's definitely something I'm looking for.
Absolutely. Me too, frankly. I'm very much looking forward to that. Well, Reed Albergotti, thank you so much for joining me today on the show. Of course, folks can head to semafor.com. That's SEMAFOR.com. But if they want to keep up to date with what you're doing, follow along, is there a place they should go to do that?
Yeah. Well, the main thing is our newsletter, the technology newsletter, is free. So go put your email address in, get the newsletter. I think it comes out twice a week. I think you'll really like it. I'm still on X. I try to go on Threads too, and all the other platforms. But you could find me anywhere. My name's pretty unique, so just just do a search.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Alrighty, folks, that brings us to the end of this episode of Tech News Weekly. The show publishes every Thursday at twit.tv/TNW. So you just head there. If you're somehow watching and you're not subscribed, that's where you go to subscribe to the show in audio and video formats. Subscribing to the show is incredibly important. Even if you tune in Discord to watch it live and you never listen to the show in your podcast player, please subscribe to the show. That's just a way to help out there. If you would like to get all of our shows ad-free, it's just the content, none of the ads, well, consider joining Club TWiT. For just $7 a month or $84 a year, you out there can join the club at twit.tv/clubtwit. When you join when you join the club, you get every single show ad-free. You also gain access to the TWiT Plus bonus feed that has extra content you won't find anywhere else. Behind the scenes, before the show, after the show, special Club TWiT events get published there, like our Escape Room in a Box, which was a lot of fun, and access to the members-only Discord server, a fun place to go to chat with your fellow Club TWiT members and also those of us here at TWiT. And for those of you who are a little worried that, joining the club is complicated, you're not sure how things work, I just did some videos that are complete tutorials walking you through the whole process of signing up for Club TWiT, getting into the Discord, being able to watch the live stream. It's got all of that stuff in there, so it should make it a little bit easier for you if you've joined the club and you're still going, I don't know what to do. Where do I go? What do I do next? Again, all of this at twit.tv/clubtwit. On top of just that wonderful feeling that you are supporting us here at TWiT, gaining access to the ad-free content, TWiT Plus bonus feed, the Discord, you also get to check out some Club TWiT exclusive shows. iOS Today with Rosemary Orchard and yours truly, Mikah Sargent. Hands on Mac, which is a short format show from me that covers Apple tips and tricks. Hands on Windows, which is a short format show from Paul Thurrott that covers Windows tips and tricks. Home Theater Geeks from Scott Wilkinson, and so much more is available in the club. twit.tv/clubtwit. We would very much appreciate it if you joined up. If you want to follow me online or check out the work I'm doing, just head to chihuahua.coffee. That's CHIHUAHUA.coffee, where I've got links to the places I'm most active online. You can catch me again on Sunday for Ask the Tech Guys, which is the show Leo Laporte and I host, where we take your tech questions live on air and do our best to answer them. And if you're a member of the club, you can, of course, check out iOS Today and Hands on Mac. Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of Tech News Weekly. I'll catch you again next week. Bye-bye.
Hey there, Scott Wilkinson here. In case you hadn't heard, Home Theater Geeks is back. Each week, I bring you the latest audio-video news, tips and tricks to get the most out of your AV system, product reviews, and more. You can enjoy Home Theater Geeks only if you're a member of Club TWiT, which costs $7 a month, or you can subscribe to Home Theater Geeks by itself for only $2.99 a month. I hope you'll join me for a weekly dose of home theater geekitude.